are racing around us, overwhelmed forces of darkness prevail. Still in the fight, see advancing before us, red flag of liberty that yet shall prevail. Then all of you workers, fighting reign all over the world and the land and the sea. On with the fight for the cause of humanity. Much toilers and the world shall be free. Then all of you workers, fighting reign all over the world and the land and the sea. On with the fight for the cause of humanity. Much toilers and the world shall be free. Death to the kings and the rich parasites, tremble before our sacred rage. The old order down we shall strike, crops of the future harvest we will. Then all of you workers, right you will reign all over the world and the land and the sea. On with the fight for the cause of humanity. Much toilers and the world shall be free. Then all of you workers, right you will reign all over the world and the land and the sea. On with the fight for the cause of humanity. Much toilers and the world shall be free.
Comrades, transgenders make up the vanguard of the socialist revolution. Говоришь, only through the overthrowing of the czarist capitalist oppression can the proletarian transgender class be liberated. We must provide dilators to the peasants and workers, and only then can the revolution succeed.
One, two, three, four. Who wants to live in reality on the fringes of negativity? The jig is up, the market's fair. Yeah, I was born a ginger man. Chills, but
Отак от буває, коли приходиш на українську землю. Отак от буває.
Твоя стейку золоті, та я твоя дівчина, чекає. Да я чекаю, не додого я
РФ.
Мы будем уничтожать врага на каждом сантиметре украинской земли.
Fuck you, Putin! Зажалькал, блядь.
Горели огни, и от любви умира. Может, рядом с тобой нам было хорошо. Что-то там за спиной меня так обожгло. Нежная обними, нежная опять. Мою руку возьми, чтобы вместе бухать. И в объятиях твоих хочу я дышать. Не могу без тебя
Буква З.
As soon as the declaration again. Oh, fuck, that's a missile, that's a missile! That's a fucking missile!
Держись дороже, я говорю, брат. Слава Украине. Создали Россию. У меня началось не МП.
Hello. Привет. Guten Tag. Hello. How is everyone? Is everyone doing well? Oh, thank you. Oh, not have one of these before. And Jack Mayhoff, thank you so much. Before the stream even began, for $9 and 99 cents, basically $10. Thank you so much. It's always a good way to start a stream. So, how is everyone? Is everyone doing well? How did you like the opening? Of course, the last Ukraine related videos weren't me. Nova was the opening video with Lenin, but the little Lenin cameo. I've been playing about with Premiere Pro.
think I'm getting the hang of some stuff. I did some new stuff. Did some new stuff in with Premiere Pro, which I practiced out in the opening troon section of the opening videos. Hope it was appreciated. It took me bloody ages to get it all just right. Even then, I'm not quite happy with it, but time was running short and the stream has to begin at some point. So, how is everyone? Is everyone doing well? Hi, Mutiny. Hi, Maureen. Good night, band. Hello. We read you. Absolutely bomb intro. Oh, I tried. Some things learned with each stream I do whenever I do these little openings. I know most of the openings I do are just stuff I've kind of stolen from the Telegram channel, so I don't really know who to credit. Like the opening Ukraine videos, I lifted those last year from some of the Russian Ukrainian Telegram channels, so I don't really know who to credit with those, but at some point I want to sit down and kind of make one of those, so I have my own dedicated little opening video that covers Ukraine stuff. And like I'm sure you guys noticed, I try to personalize the openings to the topics of what's going to be on the stream. Didn't quite have the time to fit in some Sudan stuff, but I guess some of the well, I think a large part of it's going to be Ukraine and the troons. So what do you guys want to start off with? Because I've kind of got 3 major topics to talk about, maybe 4. I'm going to touch on Sudan, but I'm not going to do a deep dive because I'm still looking into that. But I think I have a sort of basic understanding of what's happening there. We could go straight into the Ukraine Bakhmut Prigozhin update, or we could go into the Troon stuff of the Troon protest that I attended yesterday. Obviously, I was protesting against the Troons. What would you guys like to open with? And then I guess the 4th thing I want to touch on some of the drama that's happened in the community. With, of course, I'm sure almost everyone's heard of what's happened to Donbass Lavushka. I guess when I do the Sudan segment, I could try and be Darfur Dwonga and try and fit into character. You know, since that seems to be what all the Ukraine commentators do. So, for kind of 3 big topics I'm looking to touch on, and then I might I'll delve very briefly into the Donbass Lavushka stuff, because as always, whenever I critique, like I say, I don't tend to criticize. Well, I do criticize, but whenever I critique another community member, a commentator, someone involved in the Ukraine internet sphere, commentary community kind of stuff, it usually pisses off a lot of people in chat, so I might just go into that and just sort of have it on record, because a lot of people just, I know I spell for shit and my grammar's terrible, but a lot of people just seem to willingly misinterpret the things I say whenever I post about drama stuff in the Telegram, so I might just verbally articulate it. But I might do that at the end. So, what do you guys want? Do you want the Troons first, the Ukraine stuff first, or the Sudan stuff first? I usually wing this stuff. There's no notes. I never really take notes. I need to get into the habit of that. But what do you guys want? I vote Ireland. Ireland's not on the list. And Ukraine. Troon protest. Ali Jamal. I've been keeping a tangential view on the Ali Jamal. Yeah, the Ali Jamal's that's the Milo drama, isn't it? That's not my sector, as it were, so I honestly wouldn't know what to comment on that. I've been keeping a cursory eye on the drama over there, but I don't think I could really delve into the Ali stuff, so not my place and foray of knowledge. Big Tech versus Britney. Ralph with blue hair. Lots of drama. Yeah, but that's drama in sectors I'm not quite immersed in. What happened with Davushka? Like I say, we'll come to that, but she was doxxed. Turns out she's not Russian and she's been faking a Russian accent. But should I just delve into that right now, or no? Ukraine, Sudan, start with the Troons, so by the end of the stream, we have forgotten them. Okay, well, in fact, I tell you what I'll do. I'll talk about Devushka. We'll just get that out of the way, but I'll start a chat poll. And then chat can have its democratic say. So, as we are all good transgender communists, we will apply by the principles of democratic centralism. What the central committee decides will be the established will of the Buhanka chat Politburo. So you guys vote away with that while the votes come in. I'll just quickly delve into the Devushka stuff. So there's a big pro-Russian commentator called Donbashka Devushka. She is a English language, but claimed to have been Russian and spoke with a Russian English accent. Commentator has been there for a while, built up a bit of a following. Turns out that NAFO, which I'm not a fan of, I'm sure you guys know that I think NAFO are, I don't think I can say the word on YouTube, but they're bundles of sticks. I hate them a lot. They're sort of the pro-Ukrainian faction side of the internet commentary community that's poisoning and just means the entire discussion around Ukraine on the internet is pretty dog shit. So not a big fan of NAFO, but apparently they seem to have doxed Donbash Devushka. It turns out that she is not Russian. She speaks with a pure American accent. She was a US Navy non-commissioned officer, and she retired last year at the age of 37, I think it is. She lives in Washington, appears to have no connection with the Donbass or potentially with Russia at all. And of course, this is all quite hilarious in many respects because I believe I don't really follow her, so take this with a grain of salt, what I'm going to say here. But from my understanding, is she's done various quote-unquote charitable fundraising for quote-unquote charitable causes in the Donbass. Obviously, if she's turned out to be a complete fraud as such, there's going to be serious questions about where this money has gone. And a lot of her donators have been giving her money throughout the year with the assumption that she's like a Russian woman who claimed at numerous times that she lived in the Donbass and personally came under like Ukrainian artillery fire. You know, that's a bit sketchy to build up that backstory and then to go around promoting yourself online and sort of taking people's donations from that. So I posted about this because I found it a bit hilarious earlier today, because I'll sort of get my viewpoint of this out of the way, and then we'll tie this up in a nice bow and move on from community drama, because anytime I critique like people in the community of Ukraine commentary, like your Gonzalo Liras, you're the main guy from the Duran, your Scott Ritters, and then whenever I I know my channel has a sort of certain demographic that's very pro-Russian, so they don't really kick back at me whenever I critique people on the pro-Ukrainian stuff, but you know, whenever you've got people on the Ukraine side like the Azov Troon or James Vasquez who brings in tens of thousands of donations, US dollars in donations for quote-unquote Ukrainian causes, and then is actually spending it all in whorehouses in Lvov and in Kiev. Especially whenever it's the pro-Russian commentators that I critique from time to time, people in chat get upset. They say I'm jealous, and all that. Yeah, I mean, I'll get it out of the way. Yeah, it's nice to get money, not gonna lie. I like getting donations. It helps make this all sustainable and stuff. But if I really was like out to grift, I mean, the model is there. If I was out this just to completely grift money and just like take everything that I could get out of this, I would have come out as extremely pro-Russian or extremely pro-Ukrainian in the opening days that I started doing this, because that seems to be where people just throw money as much as they can. I don't do that. Yeah, it's nice to get money, but it's just something I don't do. I'm all about the nuance. I'm not here to chill. I know some of you guys curiously think I'm like an employee psyop from MI5 or MI6 or the 77th Brigade and strange theories like this, or I'm actually like a Ukrainian shill, or some strange people seem to think I'm like a neo-Nazi, pro-Russian, like Nazbol person, or stuff like this. I've maintained this from the start. I'm a retard. I'm an idiot on the internet with an obsession with this kind of stuff, and I needed to fire this out. So I know Delphin Serb was having a kick at me earlier today because I posted about a Ukrainian Orthodox church that got hit by a Russian missile, and saying, well, I know what's his weird accent? You bundle of sticks. You never post about Donbass churches being bombed by Ukrainian artillery. Yet 2 days ago, I posted reports how the Ukrainian army literally shelled the cathedral in Donetsk on at midnight liturgy, at midnight mass on Orthodox Easter. But of course, you know, this is me just shouting out into the wind because no one cares and people just hate me, or they'll just have their preconceived assumptions of me and never really swayed from that. But so my contention with like the Donbass Devushkas of the world, the Gonzalos of the world, the Scott Ritters, I can't really talk too much about Devushka because I don't really follow her stuff. I think I've shared some of her stuff time to time, but I do know this is true about Scott Ritter and Gonzalo. My big criticism about that, and what tends to be the wider thing of like the pro-Russian commentary sphere, is that they just give a very warped view of what's happening on the ground. In the same way, they're two sides of the same coin. The pro-Ukrainian commentators will have you believe like the Ukrainians are super soldiers and it's just a matter of time till Crimea is retaken and they march on Moscow. And then on the opposite side, you've got the Scott Ritters, the Gonzalos of the world, who think that the Russians are just super soldiers and it's just a matter of time till Kiev falls and Russian troops reach the border of Poland. I'm just kind of like, here, I don't want to sound like the gay enlightened centrist here, but you know, I just think it's kind of objective reality that isn't the case. And I push back when people sort of posit that, because I mean, if you just look at what's happening on the ground in Ukraine and the reports that come out, clearly we're kind of at a stalemate here. The Russian army isn't what it was meant to be. The Ukrainians, while over exceeding what they were expected to be, aren't exactly marching on Sevastopol at the moment. So that's kind of where my big contention with these sort of commentators come from, because I think I don't know if they genuinely believe it, if it's actually good faith, or if it's just bad faith and it's like, it's a monetary reason, or if it's like an ideological reason that they take the really extreme, ultra one-sided views that they do and they propagate. Who knows? But the thing I just find why I kind of focused in on Donbass Devushka is, I kind of hinted at it, is there's people who accuse me of an MI5 agent, and I have seen you in chat, and I went and had a look in her chat today, and I see some of you guys posting in her chat. It's just a little bit rich for. I know a lot of you guys who do that do it as like a joke. It's a meme that you guys have taken, but I know some of you actually do seem to think I'm like an agent of the British state. Like I get a check from MI6 or MI5 or the Ukrainian state or something. Like, I wish, believe me, I wish. I'm extremely grateful to all the guys who give me donations, but believe me, if I could get a big fat paycheck from a state actor, I'd probably be sitting a lot more financially stable than I am at the moment. So there's some people in here who seem to think like I am unironically like MI5 and I'm out here to psyop you all. But yet, at the same time, they're in Donbass Devushka's chat, thinking she's, like, actually Russian, and she's based, and she's all this kind of stuff, yet she literally worked for the US government. She was in the US Navy until last year. While the war was ongoing, when it started, she was still a US Navy member, which, you know, people in the US military and all militaries can have their own personal viewpoints, not disputing that. But alongside this, she claimed to be a Russian woman. So you got a woman who's completely fabricated this backstory of how she lives in Donbass and stuff, which is fake. She proudly promotes how she is a proud Russian Jewish woman. Not going to go too much into that, but I know some of you guys will speculate and love that little cherry thing. So she's completely fabricated this backstory. So claims to be a Russian Jewish woman, always spoke with a Russian accent whenever she had a public facing like stream. Worked for the US Navy. I'm not too sure like what branch or what she did in the US Navy, but she was a non-commissioned officer in the US Navy. She was pro-Troon. I've never known a Russian woman anywhere, especially like a self-proclaimed Russian nationalist woman, a right-wing Russian nationalist woman, to be pro-transgender. And if you go back in the chat and you look at it, I mean, this is where I got very suspicious of her last year, because whenever the whole Kiwi Farms Keffels drama happened, Donbass Devushka came out in like support of Keffels and anti-Kiwi Farms, and made some really sus posts about how I shared some of them into the channel earlier on to highlight the point about how she's like, what did she say? You don't have to be pro-pronoun, but I will. No, you don't have to respect pronouns, but I will. And then some other like pro-transgender posts. So last year I was like, this is really, really sus for like a Russian Donbass woman who's apparently being shelled by the Ukrainian army day in, day out, but she's like really pro-transgender. I mean, don't know many Russian women, let alone Russian nationalist women who do that. So I got very sus about her then. So let's just recap. Employed by the US Navy, completely fabricated a Russian origin backstory, claims to be a proud Russian Jewish woman, and is pro like troons and Western degeneracy, but also claims to be like a pro Z Russian nationalist. Like, guys, I mean, I'm an open book. I mean, I've done streams whenever like that weird Russian liberal guy thought he stumbled on the golden goose that was going to destroy me, about my seedy right-wing past, meeting Steve Bannon and me making edgy posts and stuff. I'm an open book. Like you know, I'll speak about stuff if it comes up in drama, and I have whenever it's come up over the year about like my past and all this kind of stuff. But I mean, I've not fabricated a backstory. But, you know, as far as you know, I'm not even British, not even from these islands. That's a joke, I am. But, you know, I've not fabricated an entire backstory. I don't speak with a fake accent, unfortunately. This is my dirge of an accent. I was once an officer cadet in the UOTC, and I was an air cadet, like whenever I was a teenager. But and yeah, my family's very heavily military and stuff. But I mean, like, I'm not employed by like British military, at least. Well, I mean, I was an officer cadet like what, 8 years ago. You know, I'm what I'm trying to say is like the people who are calling me like an MI5 agent and I'm a glowy and all this kind of stuff, but yet they're in Donbass Devushka's chat, like thinking what she says is gospel and just taking everything she says at the drop of a hat. It's just like, guys, I mean, I know we all like the bat for our side, and I know some of you like really like to deep throat the propaganda of your particular side that you back in this conflict. But I mean, like, guys, give your head a wobble. Like, seriously. Especially if you're going to come at me and like accuse me of being like a state actor and agent. It's like, guys, I've got a dying Telegram account of under 7,000 people. I've got a Twitter account that's just made 500 followers, and 120 of those are from feminists who followed me because of the protest yesterday. I mean, I've got a YouTube channel of 1,400 subs. I mean, if I am getting this big fat juicy glowy British state NATO shill paycheck, I don't think they're getting their bang for their buck. That's what I'm saying. It's like a little bit of critical thinking, guys. I know we all like Brian. Brian's our little house Brian. But we all like him, you know, we all like to pat in his head and see his crazy posts and how this black man from like Detroit is the most insanely pro-Russian guy you'll ever meet. But I mean, you don't have to like take after his mannerisms and what I'm trying to say is we all love Brian, but maybe the black community isn't the best place where we should be taking our getting examples to follow. Well, I'll leave it at that. So that's my little thing on Donbass Devushka. So I hope that kind of clears the air, but I know it won't, because there's still people attacking me in chat just before I went live. So that's that. So where are we with the poll? So with 51 votes, the Troons are leading with 46% of the vote. So I guess we will be Trooning it out then, I guess. So I guess most of the I'm not going to spend too long on it. Just some kind of observations on it. It's kind of a complete sidetrack from the Russia and Ukraine, but you know, a running theme through my channel is my abhorrence of Western decadence and degeneracy, and I kind of seen it firsthand, overtly yesterday, and just the weird, bizarre, mentally ill positions that these people seem to take kind of make it a bit more related to post-Soviet issues. So I guess it kind of ties it in a bit, and it was kind of funny. I enjoyed it. It was pretty fun. So and also we'll fly through the Troon stuff. So yesterday there was a protest in Belfast, which I went to attend. The Let Women Speak Belfast protest, where Posey Parker and Graham Linehan, the guy who wrote Father Ted. I've never actually watched Father Ted, so I don't really quite see the appeal, but you know, that's from someone who doesn't watch their stuff. Basically it's women. There's a big schism in the feminist community where a lot of feminists are kind of rightfully pretty pissed off that people who are men but say they are women are forcing themselves into women's spaces, women's bathrooms. I'm sure, I mean, if you're following my stuff, you know all about this. So I don't need to go through the backstory. So there's this protest with these women against a sort of transgender Troon encroachment on their spaces and their erasure from public life in favor of mentally ill men. They came to do a speech. It's called The Big Fish. I might just bring up my Twitter account and just go for posts, to be honest, so you guys can sort of see. Forgive me, I'm just going down to where I started tweets from yesterday, and we'll just go through some of these tweets. So yeah, so coming up on screen, okay? Forgive me, it's just the latency. I'm just accounting for that because I don't want to do a boomer where I'm talking about stuff on screen again that isn't actually displaying on the screen. Oh, there we go, that's it there. So Turf Wars, yes, indeed, it is Turf Wars by another name. So this was the area in Belfast. This is called the Big Fish. This is a famous big fish that Chinese tourists love. This is where the women were congregating. So Belfast being a city, as always, it's kind of where degeneracy congregates, and degeneracy tends to come from largely one side of the community, and they were there. But we'll just go through some of the videos. These were the Troons, the Abominations, the demons of Slaanesh. So they turned up to accost the women. We'll go up, and the thing where it kind of got really interesting was no surrender to the hates, because you know women are hateful. The usual kind of abominations, but this is where it started to get really fun. I'm not a Marxist. I'm sure most of you guys know I'm not a Marxist. I'm pretty right wing. Just have I have a nice nostalgia for Soviet aesthetics and the like, but from my understanding, and again, I'm not a Marxist, but Marxism is a materialist, very much a materialist philosophy from the left Hegelians, and how your material conditions, your economic and social conditions are what needs to come about to advance the rights of your class and to bring about the revolutionary overthrow of capitalism. So, Marxist for trans is an interesting take. Never quite heard that before. I know Western communists are renowned for their deviancy, but I don't think that Karl Marx, whenever he was conceiving of Das Kapital in the Communist Manifesto, really gave a lot of thought to mentally ill men who think they're women. Was certainly an interesting sight. I kind of wanted to go over and speak to him, but I think I've got a photo of them somewhere, but there was a bunch of like abominations that were staring me down whenever I was taking these photos, so I didn't want to go over and get mauled to death by some horrific troon. So I'm pretty sure it'd be a very interesting conversation with Mr. Marxist for trans, but that wasn't the only thing, because not only did we have Marxist for trans, where is it? We had transgender Marxist Leninism, which surely baffled me, so I don't think you can quite see it well. That is the flag of the USSR, of the Soviet Union, with a bottom banner of the trans flag. I've got some things to say about that, which I'll come on into a little bit, but we've also got... I'm not too familiar with this specific flag. I don't know if this is like an obscure Irish Communist Party. Whenever I seen this, I immediately thought it might have been the flag of the Shining Path, the Peruvian Marxist movement that's renowned for the brutal civil war. It's thought either that or maybe the flag of the FARC, the communist guerrilla movement in Colombia. I'm not overly familiar with Latin American Marxist movements, so I don't hold me to that, but that's kind of what I initially thought that might have been. I'm not too... I should probably have Googled and checked, to be honest. So, we've got one communist flag. We've got the flag of the USSR with I say that word on YouTube. With a troon banner on the bottom. And then, a flag of the Spanish Republic. Yeah, it is. No, the flag of the international brigades that fought with the Spanish Republic. So, pretty left-wing. But I don't recall trans rights being a major battle cry for the international brigades and for the Spanish Republican movement whenever it was rightfully and justly crushed by the holy hand of El Calidio, of Francisco Franco and the nationalists. Yeah, but that wasn't the only thing. This really activated my almonds. This is what inspired me to do my little Lenin voiceovers in the opening. For people who are not aware, that is a outline of the head of Lenin superimposed on a transgender flag. And not only that, that is... Let me just actually confirm this before I say something that might be wrong and people will get upset at me at. Yeah, it is. I knew it was. This particular bust as well, this image of Lenin's face, is the emblem of the old Communist Party of the Soviet Union. This is what they used to wear on their lapel badges. People like Gorbachev, Politburo members, whenever they held party congresses in the USSR. So I'm not too sure if they went out of their way to certainly corroborate that they took inspiration from it, but that is... Yeah, it is a little bit off, but it is basically the same, the exact same image superimposed from the old emblem of the Communist Party of the USSR. So there's a theme what I'm trying to get at is there is a theme developing here, or there was a theme developing at this protest. A very far left, very Marxist-Leninist, Soviet-inspired, left-wing version of transgenderism or something like that. Very bizarre, absolutely mind-boggling bizarre. There's your pedophile flag there, your pedophile inclusive flag. There's your Antifa idiots. Just... like, what I mean, how would you describe this? Like, I know what I would describe it, but I'd probably get banned from YouTube for saying it. But I think most generously, I could say, like, freaks. Very confused people. But of course, they're troons, so that's kind of a given. But so for example, these are the women's here. The only sort of colors that the women's protest sort of came out with was the old suffragette colors, the purple, the white, and the green. This for people who are not versed in this history, this was the color that the old British suffragette movement wore whenever they were pushing for the vote in the early 1900s. So this is the women's section. This is just as the protest was starting to build up. A lot more people came along later, but as you can see, that's what the woman aesthetics look like. That's your Father Ted guy. Like I say, I've never watched Father Ted, so I can't really speak too much for it, but just to sort of give you an idea of what the women's movement sort of built up to. This is kind of the size it got. Maybe about 100, 150 people turned up. Whereas these abominations had, I think, maybe around 200 people. But the thing that happened as well is a lot of them came up from the south. They came up from Ireland. There was buses that came up from Dublin. So, I mean, I'm sure you guys know I'm not exactly the biggest fan of the Free State. But, I mean, like, Irish people, you kind of keep your degeneracy south of the border. I mean, we've got enough of it up here. We don't need more of these abominations coming up. So I'll just go through some of the footage. Another thing that was kind of apparent is there is a particular PSNI officer, PSNI being the police service of Northern Ireland, called Paul Bloomer, who is extremely vocal about his politics and his views on this kind of stuff. I'll bring up the thread just to show you about it. My thread got a bit of traction. So I did this tweet the other day. Is there any reason why PSNI officer laptop, I spell terribly whenever I'm on my phone. I'm sure you guys are painfully aware of that. But is there any reason why PSNI officer Paul Bloomer has deleted his Twitter account when today is the day of the Let Women Speak Belfast occurs, an event he tacitly encouraged violence at? So this was the account that he deleted. Paul Bloomer verified, Paul Bloomer, born of two sides of Northern Ireland, so he claims descent from both Protestant and Catholic sides of Northern Irish society. Trustee at Belfast Pride. Comms at the LGBT Police UK. Queer Bear. Trans Ally. Healy. Views are my own and not of my employer. So this man is a serving police officer in Northern Ireland. God, I miss the RUC. Yeah. Really feel safe. This guy policing the streets. So this was a tweet he made earlier in the month. Posey Parker's hate tour. Posey Parker was one of the speakers for the women's section. Hate tour of Australia has been a disaster for her. Just watch this video. Some standout quotes for me are, "This is the worst place I've seen. I've been to Chicago. This is the worst. I'm not a feminist. Yada yada. Hope Belfast gives her a similar reception." Now, what happened? The thing why this is controversial is because Posey Parker was physically assaulted in Australia and in New Zealand. Literal mobs of transgenders, of troons, and whenever we talk about troons, I'm sure we all know this, it's always the male to female ones. They're extremely violent, they're extremely unhinged, they're psychotic people, and again, just gonna put it out there, probably get me in trouble with YouTube, but my kind of view on this is that a large majority of these people are just fetishists. They are over-socialized young men who have too much access to the internet, particularly internet porn, and they get really creepy and weird fetishes, and a lot of those fetishes end up with this very sick and bizarre obsession with children. Not going to go too far down there, because I'm sure you all guys know what I'm insinuating there. And another aspect of that is that they have a very strong desire to dominate biological women. They're kind of, that's something that quite a lot of these transgender men like really get off on is, I'm pretty sure this whole drive to go into women's toilets, to go into like women's prisons, to go into women's spaces is just the domination factor of it. This very creepy domination of women aspect. I'm convinced it's a fetish. By and large, I think it's a fetish. So whenever you have a woman stand up for her biological rights as a woman, God, this is where the decadent West has got me. I'm now sounding like a literal radical feminist. But whenever a woman rightfully stands up for her rights as a biological woman, and then gets violently assaulted by a bunch of mutilated men, psychological conditions, yeah, not really good. But nonetheless, that's what happened in Australia. So whenever this serving PSNI officer says, I hope Belfast gives a similar reception, you know, that's a tacit, you know, like if a normal person, if I said that, I don't really think it'd really be worth anything. But whenever a serving police officer who might police the event is saying that, it carries a bit more weight to it. It becomes a bit more disturbing then, which I elucidate in this thread. So this was the other post, which was of particular concern to me. This is what I posted. Officer Bloomer took it upon himself to invite notorious trans activist Caffles to his home last year, despite the fact that Caffles has a long history of making obscene rape comments about the mothers of people they attack on Twitter. If you really want to go down the rabbit hole of the Caffles stuff, I recommend you go look at Josh Moon, Mad at the Internet stream on them. He does a very good comprehensive rundown on just what a disturbing piece of shit Caffles is. So not going to go too far down that rabbit hole at the moment, but what happened here, and I'm not going to go too far into it for personal reasons, but this abomination, this is Caffles here, came to Northern Ireland because of drama that happened in Canada. It started to get doxxed. Not going to go into it. Go watch Josh's streams on it. But came to Northern Ireland. Someone posted a picture out the front of the apartment that Caffles was hiding in Belfast. You know, it's a bit of a strange place to come and hide, but nonetheless, that's where it came. There was then a bomb threat called into that apartment, and the police got involved and all this kind of stuff. So Caffles is technically like a potential victim of crime. I've never heard this before in my life, but I've never heard of a police officer inviting a victim of a crime they're investigating around to their house for drinks. Because as you can see this tweet, it's not every day that someone making history drops by to have drinks and some BBQ at your bar. And this isn't like a public bar, this is like his personal bar. From my understanding, this is like his personal bar at his house. This isn't like a public bar. This is his home. Never ever heard of a serving police officer in like any force anywhere inviting a quote-unquote victim of crime round to their house for drinks. Pretty fucking wild. I thought that generally serving police officers in the UK were discouraged or couldn't have social media for various reasons, but apparently this guy has, and I mean, not only this is, look at this shirt he's wearing here, refugees welcome here. One of the principles of British policing, of which the PSNI is a British police force, and it draws its legitimacy from these principles, is called the Peelian principles, because modern police forces came from Sir Robert Peel in the 1840s. And one of the big principles that he laid down for how a civil police force should operate and gain legitimacy from the community in which it polices, because British police operate by what's called policing by consent. They police by the consent of the community they police. I'm not going to go into if that's actually what happens or not, but that's the principles of it. But one of the big enshrined principles, and this is especially keen in Northern Ireland because of the history of Northern Ireland, the Troubles, the RUC, policing of communities and all this kind of stuff, is that police officers should always refrain from expressing their personal politics and their personal social views in public. So it kind of it raises a big eyebrow whenever this guy is a serving police officer in Northern Ireland, and not only is he openly promoting like his pro LGBTQI politics, which is a controversial issue, like that's why there's protests about it. It isn't like a settled issue that, you know, there is no controversy and therefore the police can just endorse it. Why he can promote it to the extent he does, and I know pretty much every police force does it these days, but rarely do you see individual officers take it to this level. But then he's also wearing a shirt saying refugees welcome here, which is a very controversial issue in the UK at the moment and in Northern Ireland. So, and which are protested as well. So if you protest against the importation of military-aged males who invade this country by illegal immigration, or if you protest like the women did yesterday against the encroachment of transgenderism into society, and then you're aware of Paul Bloomer, what are you meant to think if, like, say, some psychotic troon male to female transgender man like attack you in the street at a protest, and you go to the police cordon to protect you, and then that you come up to the police cordon and this guy's standing there in uniform? I mean, are you meant to feel like, what would you think then? Would you feel confidence in the police? I wouldn't. If I was arrested, or if the police came to investigate anything that happened at the protest yesterday, and this guy's the arresting officer or the interviewing officer, like, what are you meant to think? Like, this is pretty, you know, it breaks a lot of sort of assumptions about how the police are meant to operate. So that's kind of why I made this Twitter thread. So we'll just go for the rest of it. This is just a post on another thing addressing CAFLs. CAFLs, again, go watch Mad at the Internet streams on him. Very disturbing individual. There's grooming of underage kids. Here there's supplying of drugs to underage kids without their parents' knowledge. So again, did the serving police officer who decided to invite this person round for drinks ask or do his due diligence to find out about the person he is openly and publicly endorsing? Oh, and it's also worth saying that Caffels is a communist. He was a member of like the Communist Party of Canada. So we've got another weird fucking communist troon. But nonetheless, did Paul Bloomer do his due diligence to find out about this? So then I go on to say, and what would imagine breaches the Peel principle of British policing regarding politics and impartiality. He uses his Twitter account to promote his personal politics and policy views, social views, while also maintaining it as a public-facing outlet of the PSNI. Because he's like a spokesperson for like LGBT police officers and stuff, so he has his Twitter account carries public weight through that association, and he makes a lot of that association. So, you know, he's personally profiting in terms of like social media clout from his career as a police officer. So let's see what he's saying here. Hate crimes against LGBT have increased massively more than other strands, yet today people with enormous platforms and in positions of power are contributing to it to organize pile-on of LGBT plus charities and community members. You're feeding this problem, you're making it worse. I'm talking to you, J.K. Rowling, amongst those that know better. So serving police officer singling out J.K. Rowling, who is, you know, not, I hate Harry Potter. I think J.K. Rowling has kind of made the bed that she is now having to lay in. And there's a lot of people, and I'll address it whenever I sort of come to it, but there's a lot of women who were very left-wing whenever they're a bit younger, promoted all these progressive clauses, and now they are standing about looking very bemused and bewildered, going, what the fuck? Their progressive movement has long since left them by, and they're now on the receiving end of it. And J.K. Rowling's one of these people, but still, I don't think that's a serving police officer should be personally tweeting at them, like attacking them whenever they themselves are being literally stalked in Edinburgh at their house by Troon activists. So, pretty sus. Here we go. Impartiality means doing things in a fair and equal manner is not the same as neutrality. People conflate those things all the time, but they're not the same. Supporting human rights is not a breach of impartiality. Advocating for the furtherance of HR is not a breach either. Police should be neutral. Police officers have their own personal views. They should be neutral in their policing duties. So like I say, if there was trouble yesterday at the protest and this guy starts arresting people, do we think he's going to, like, if he was there arresting people, is he going to maybe put the kid gloves on whenever he's arresting, like, the Troon protesters? And then is he going to start swinging the baton whenever he goes to arrest the women? Because, like, I question his impartiality here with the things he says. This is the rally Kelly J. Keane, Posey Parker, was a keynote speaker at. Among her supporters were men in black garb giving Nazi salutes. She is speaking in Belfast on the 16th of April. If the scenes from Melbourne are repeated in my town, I'll be heartily heartbroken. So, serving police officer in Belfast, this is what he tweets. And it's like, again, he was there in uniform police in that protest. You know, I don't think I would have had a lot of confidence in him. So, and then to wrap it all up, alongside this, Officer Bloomer also uses his account to post, retweet, and promote elements of his fetish. Don't really want to go too much into it, but here you go. You know, you imagine police officers should maintain a respectful public image. Especially in Northern Ireland, you know, there is a very large constituency in Northern Ireland of literal fundamentalist Christians. I'm not too sure if Jesus, like, what is this? And it gets worse because he's also a pup. I'm not going to go into what a pup is, because if you don't know, you almost certainly don't want to know, but here you go. It's really nice to see they have dog-friendly bars over here, and I believe this is whenever he was, like, in the Canary Islands or Madeira or somewhere. And he's found a puppy-friendly bar. And, again, I'm not really going to go into it, but if you are blessed enough not to know what this is talking about, they're not talking about canines, they're not talking about cute little doggies. Or if they are talking about cute little doggies, it makes it incredibly that many times worse. So, that is what a serving police officer in Northern Ireland feels the need to tweet about. So, and this is how I just sort of tie it up. If women at today's Let Women Speak Belfast event are indeed attacked by, pardon me, by a hostile mob, seemingly endorsed by Officer Bloomer, and they turn to attending PSNI officers for safety and protection, and they find Officer Bloomer in their ranks, can they really be protected or have confidence in the PSNI? So that was my little Twitter thread. Who is this at the bottom? Are they blocked? I've been blocked. Sorry, I'm doing a little social media snooping. I thought I had a private window. Oh no, they privated their account. Here's my iPhone. Because if I recall correctly, I forget who it was, but I think I had a fairly positive interaction with this person here, so I think they've privated their account. They probably got dogpiled by troons yesterday, so that was a little thread. So with this in mind, I had pretty low expectations for how the protest was going to be policed, but I have to say, I seen the better side of the PSNI yesterday. It turns out that good Officer Bloomer was told by the PSNI to leave Northern Ireland, and there is a video going around somewhere, I don't have it immediately to hand, of him basically crying at Belfast Airport, telling him that he's been told to leave Northern Ireland for the next couple of days over the duration of the protest. So he has painted such a public profile on him that his employers, the police service of Northern Ireland, told him to he was such a liability he needed to leave the country, which raises its own questions. If this person who has made themselves such a public profile where his employers and the police force question his ability to effectively carry out his policing duties, then how can he be employed by the police? You know, how can he, in good conscience, or how can the PSNI in good conscience continue his employment as an officer? Forgive me, I just need to go take a quick drink. And on top of that, is he getting paid? Was he given paid holiday to leave? Which raises a whole nother angle to this. If he has compromised his ability to impartially and without fear nor favor carry out his policing duties, where it has to physically leave the country by his own employers' insistence, is his employer paying that? Is that fair to all the other officers in the PSNI, that he gets to go off for a paid holiday somewhere while they have to go out and carry on their duties? So just some things to consider there. There's just some of my thoughts on good Officer Bloomer. But like I say, I was pleasantly surprised by the PSNI. I seen very professional policing of the event, and as you can see in this video, the police knew exactly if there was going to be trouble, where the trouble came from. This is the women's protest here. As you can see, there's a bit of a line here. No real line over here, but a very close-knit police cordon along the Troon protest. So even the police themselves understood if there was going to be trouble, it was going to come from these people. And various opportunities throughout the day. There's a wider shot of it. So a bit of a cordon there, but as you can see, they're pretty heavily kettled in there. And have a look, see if I've got footage. Yep. And there's a couple of guys who tried to get out of the Troon protest and try and come in and cause trouble at the women's protest. And again, I'm loath really to give endorsements to the police, but the police dealt with these people in a very professional manner. No complaints about the police whatsoever, which is it was a nice white pill considering my very low expectation going in, given good PC bloomers antics online. So not a big fan of the PSNI, you know, a big RUC man, but I have to say, the conduct of the officers on the day, very impressed. They equipped themselves well. It certainly exceeded my low expectations of what I expected. So this was one of the Antifa bundle of sticks, looking pretty pathetic, wandering about. And this is everyone's favorite dancing salmon colored dungaree. God knows what that thing is, but again, massive props to these cops. Like, imagine being one of these cops having to police these freaks, and they just stand there, stone cold. So again, props to the police. So so before I go into the just the bizarre ideological tinge of the transgender communism, I spoke to some of the women at the event. All very nice. Sort of there was the women's section of the protest. You had sort of like, it was quite a wide spectrum. You had sort of family women. Some of them brought their kids. A friend of mine wanted to go, but she was just kind of so concerned that the troons might like acid attack the event. She's got a young child. She didn't go, but there was people there with their kids, families with their kids, mothers and husbands. You had sort of like proper full-on bull dyke people, like hardcore, what you expect, like stereotypical biker lesbian people. You had your sort of old grannies. You had a fair swath, sort of young teenage girls as well, young professional women. You had a fair breadth of the woman community. God, I'm really sounding like a bloody feminist. So there's a fair mix of them there. And I was speaking to a couple of them, and I kind of, I went to this protest because I'm supporting the women, because people need to take a stand up against the troons, because there's this, especially on like right-wing circles, small c conservative circles, there is this, and I think this is like the boomer generation mentality coming in here, is that common sense will always win out. No, common sense will never win out, will not win out unless it is enforced and if it's stood up for. And a lot of these women, I think, are of the same mindset, is they think, common sense will win out. Surely people will sort of understand that these men aren't actually women and stuff like that. And it's like, no, these people are creeping into all positions of power, and they're going to force you to accept their degenerate lifestyles and their deviancies. So you need to stand up and take a stand. So that's kind of why I went to it, because I just really hate troons. These, like I say, kind of touched on it earlier on. I think these are people with pretty degenerate sexual fetishes that are just completely run amok, and no one's standing up and telling them, no, sit back down, and you need mental counseling. You do not need political endorsements. You do not need social power. If anything, you are the last people in society who needs political power and social capital. You people need to seriously start seeing psychiatrists and stuff like that. So that's kind of why I went to support the women on that aspect of it. But I have to say, some of the women there, especially some of the older women, I can see exactly, and this goes back to the comment I made with J.K. Rowling, is I feel a lot of these older women they were feminists in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. They would have been out promoting the progressive politics of the era, women's rights and all this kind of stuff. And, I do support quote unquote women's rights, but, the sort of things like mandated pay equality and all this kind of stuff, like whenever quote unquote feminism goes too far, the kind of stuff that we all got upset at SJWs and feminists on the internet, like back in 2014, at that kind of stuff. A lot of these women, the older women, I have a feeling they were those kind of feminists, like the radical feminists in the 70s and the 80s. Then they left university, they went off and got a job, they went and had professional careers, they might have raised families. And a couple of decades down the line, the seeds that they helped plant have come back to roost on them. And where their radical politics and feminist issues back in the 70s and 80s, now they are just standing aghast, looking around themselves, thinking, what the Christ happened? How are we here? I kind of feel sorry in a way for him, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, this is the boomer generation all over. This is the seeds that they helped plant coming back to bite them in the ass, and it's going to be people of my generation and younger who are going to be left with this hellscape that they have created. So, in a sense that they've woke up too late, but I mean, at least they've woken up. So that's kind of my view on some of these women, is that they're kind of coming, the chickens that they have come home to roost, they helped hatch a couple of decades ago, which is a bit depressing in a way, but yeah, Then you had the sort of younger women who I think are, like there were the Rape Crisis Center in Northern Ireland came out in support of the Troons, which is just astounding. The Rape Crisis Center. Like, could you imagine being a woman who? I can't believe I'm speaking about this and I sound like this. Like 2014 me would be just astonished. Just shows how insane society has become, chat, hasn't it? That I'm having to talk about this god awful stuff. So, yeah, just abominable. I had fun, met a friend there. Got recognized by a guy in the crowd, which was a bit interesting for me. Don't know if you're watching or not. Hi, it's nice to meet you. Thank you for the kind words and stuff. Hope you enjoyed the day. So, but had a bit of fun. Whenever I lived in London, I used to go around covering protests and stuff in a similar manner to this. I covered the Black Lives Matter protests and the like, so it was a nice little hark back to that. Nice little day out. Nice excuse to leave the house. So I had fun. Seen some abominations, some right degenerates, and kind of got reinforced in my disdain for these fucking people. Just what abominations. So with that kind of spiel over, we'll go back into the absolute hellscape of this. Probably a bit of an autiste way of approaching it, but needless to say, if you've got a bunch of troons walking about with Soviet flags and Lenin on the background of transgender colors and all this kind of stuff, I think we all know that they are deeply mentally ill on various levels, but the cognitive dissonance as well is pretty astounding. If you don't know, the Soviet Union was pretty socially conservative, especially post like 1925. Whenever the revolution happened, homosexuality was briefly decriminalized, but then it was rapidly recriminalized. And during the late 20s and especially through the 30s, official party doctrine, Soviet doctrine, held that we're not even talking about transgenders, because thankfully, like, the only people who knew about transgenders at this time were very bizarre, very obscure Institute for Sexual Wissenschafts in Weimar, Germany, Berlin at the time. But the Soviet Union considered homosexuality, quote unquote, social fascism. It was a deviation of decaying capitalism, of late stage capitalism. If you're a homosexual in the 30s and especially in the 40s under Stalin, you would be arrested as a fascist agitator, probably potentially as a Trotskyist, if even going there. Going beyond the Stalinist era, because of course Stalin was his own particular interesting facet of Soviet history. Before and after Stalin, the USSR was a very different thing. But even in the 60s, under the Khrushchev liberal thought of the era, if you were a homosexual in the USSR, you were institutionalized, you were arrested, and you were sent to a mental asylum to be treated for, I don't have the quote specific to hand, but it was something like a deviancy of the mind resulting from capitalist influences. Under Brezhnev, the Soviet legal code on the homosexuality only increased in severity. So that was the liberal thought for Khrushchev. Got worse under, or better depending on your point of view, under Brezhnev. And then it kind of, the USSR kind of rode out the whole Brezhnev legal code towards this kind of stuff up until essentially the collapse of the Union. Very brief opening up in the final days of Perestroika and in the last days of the Union. But yeah, Marxist-Leninism, transgenderism is not something I think had the USSR still been around today. And in many ways, I kind of miss it. I think the USSR, if it was still around today, would probably be fighting an ideological battle against the United States and the decadent West across the globe, wherever like transgenderism and like homosexual rights and LGBTQ plus stuff comes in. I think there is an alternate reality where the Cold War is going on, and the latest front of the Cold War is this the socially conservative, pro-family Soviet Union pushing back against the degenerate, decadent Western globo homo world order. So, I mean, the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, which is the legal successor to the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, I believe it actually advocates for the recriminalization of homosexuality in Russia, because like being gay and lesbian and stuff in Russia is legal. It's just they draw a very strong line at like any public showing of it. So you can be gay and lesbian in Russia, but if you like go out and be lesbian and gay in Russia, it's going to end badly for you. So, for example, this picture that I've chosen for the background of this stream, I picked it for a particular reason. This is a Russian gay rights activist who was arrested in St. Petersburg because he tried to fly the rainbow flag, because we all know like being LGBTQ plus pedo whatever is effectively like being its own nationality at this stage. It's its own flag, its own anthem, its own identity. And the Russians, I think maybe in some cases they took it too far, but I think the Russians generally are right to put a very strong step down on this stuff, especially whenever it comes towards kids. You know, that's something there's very little of Putin's Russia that I will outright endorse, but I think the very tough line on this sort of Western degenerate stuff is something I can certainly get behind. And it was very similar in Ukraine up until recently, and it's the same story in Belarus. I was saying this. See if I can find what I'm looking for. Because as they do it the same in Russia is, you know, you can I'll lay this out on the table and then we'll move off this topic. But like, yeah, I post stuff in my channel. I do a lot of it for comedic effect, you know, very anti-Troon, very anti the whole LGBTQ agenda kind of stuff. I'm not a big fan of the flags, the parades and stuff, but like if you're gay or you're lesbian, I don't really care. Like as long as you don't make it like your only identity and put it in front of everyone and everyone has to like accept you and everything you do. Not a big fan of those kinds of people, but like if you're just gay or you're lesbian or something, like I don't really care. You know, people are people, do what you want in the privacy of your own home kind of thing. But I'm sure, as we all know, is that you have a lot of the LGBTQ plus people are they will shove it in your face. And I'll just bring up this sort of example here. A number of years ago, there's a national holiday in Russia for the VDV. I'm sure you guys know my talking about the VDV, the paratroopers, Battle of Hostomel, very heavily engaged everywhere. They have their own national holiday in Russia. And one year, I believe it was 2014, I think this was, or something like that. A gay activist decided to congregate on that day and like make a big showing in St. Petersburg of hoisting the gay rights flag and stuff. Naturally, I'm sure, as you guys know, the VDV are hard bastards. Although, let's be honest, most of these guys are probably dead in a ditch in Ukraine at this stage. But let's just say the gay activists didn't come off well. I think they didn't actually beat this guy up because I think the police got to him in time to save his life. But, you know, this is a veterans parade. This is like a Veterans Day in Russia. And then if you come to where they're congregating and you do this shit, I mean, you're kind of asking for it. I know this kind of stuff flies in the West. They get away with it in the West, but evidently they don't get away with it in Russia. And this guy almost very nearly probably was close to getting beaten to death, because I mean, there's so like this is your kind of like stereotypical like twiggy gay guy, and then you've just got like, I mean, I don't know what ethnicity this is. This isn't an ethnic or racial comment, but I mean, like, this guy barely looks human. Like, this guy looks like he came down out of the Caucasus and like fights bears. I wouldn't go around provoking him or these guys as they're showing off their big manly. Well, who knows? Maybe that's the kind of thing he's into. But I wouldn't go around like antagonizing these guys with their big manly muscles. So there we go. I can, on the big bucket lists of topics to cover for my streams while talking about a war in Ukraine, I can now tick off the gay rights stuff. You never have to talk about this ever again in relation to Russia and Ukraine. Though I will still keep making my anti-troon posts every now and again whenever the degeneracy of troons becomes too much to handle. So that is the protest stuff out of the way. Just my little spiel on it. So with that, I think we will now transition into the map stream segment of the night of the stream. So let's bring up the map. In fact, no, just before we come to the map, I think we will quickly dip over to Telegram, because I think we need to look at some of the latest stuff that Prigozhin has put out. So just some interesting stuff recently. Yevgeny Prigozhin. You spell Prigozhin. Prigozhin has done another couple of visits to Bakhmut. Of course, the battle is still at its height and ongoing. We'll just play some of these videos, just annotate what it is. So here, he's gone to a church in Bakhmut, and he's lighting a candle for the Russian dead of the battle, which feeds into a pretty strong religious theme of Wagner and of Prigozhin. The reason why I kind of focus on Prigozhin, kind of like how I focus a lot on the Strelkov. Sorry, I'm having another brain aneurysm. This is a person we're going to be hearing a lot about. These very public statements and stuff that he's doing. Like this going to the front, as I say, and I did it in my stream. I think I did on Solidar. I went into it a bit more in depth. This guy is going to be a very big figure in Russia going forward. Whether he has his eyes on the presidency or not, this very strong association with him with Ukraine, he is positioning himself as a very strong leading figure of the Russian Siloviki circle. I think it's safe to say at this stage, Sergei Shoigu, the Minister of Defense, is effectively being completely eclipsed by Yevgeny Prigozhin. At this, where I need to remove the Communist Transgender ban. Let it on now. Yes, it is. So, and also, Wagner is very much anti-communist. It's anti-Soviet, which carries a lot of nuance. So what do I mean by that in the Russian context? Wagner, whenever it appeals to Russian nationalism, it's very much a right-wing Russian nationalism, but then again, a lot of Russian right-wing nationalists also aspire to Soviet symbology and the Soviet legacy. Yevgeny Prigozhin and Wagner very much reject that. Their concept of Russia isn't recreation of the Soyuz, of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, of which Russia was the leading republic. It seems to be very much more I don't know if the ethnic aspect comes into it too much, given the makeup of a lot of Wagner's troops, but it's very much Russian cultural nationalism. It is the lands we are fighting in Ukraine isn't to create like a Russian Ukraine. It is to expand the borders of Russia. It is to reclaim these old Russian territories and repopulate them with people who speak and are culturally Russian. Is not, we are looking to recreate a new pro-Russian Ukrainian state as a way like what the more Soviet inclined Russian actors would be. And a part of this is a very strong adherence to Russian Orthodoxy. So just as you've seen in this video, him paying homage and respect at shrine with the icons to the fallen of the battle. The movie, Wagner released its own feature film last year after the Battle of Wagner, and that movie had very strong religious overtones. And if you look at a lot of Wagner propaganda, whenever they're not advertising for recruits on Pornhub, a lot of Wagner's like promotional material will feature things like the cross. In some cases, it will feature things like depending where it's recruiting, like in Tatarstan or in the Caucasus, or even in places like Central Asia, they'll start to bring in Islamic theology as well into their symbology. So Wagner's very much positioned itself as sort of like this very traditional, if not outright religiously orthodox Christian, very much just religious, and they're positioning themselves as like this ideological force against a sort of like atheistic degeneracy that emanates from the West, which is manifesting itself in Ukraine. That's kind of how I see like Prigozhin is positing Wagner and stuff in regards to the conflict in Ukraine at this stage. Alongside this, he met up with a bunch of civilians who were caught up in the combat zone. So, again, don't speak Russian, so I can't give you translations, but there is some stuff that I found very interesting in this footage. So this is him meeting Wagner fighters in Bakhmut. So what I'm going to say here is, yeah, he's all dressed up in combat gear, and he is kind of in a combat zone, but I think it's largely for show. His rifle, he's carrying a AK-74-2U, which is the carbine version of the AK-74 pattern rifle. It's the paratrooper model. And that's the kind of thing that made me posit that this is kind of more of an act, him decking out in full combat gear, because obviously he's not going to be going to the front line to fight, although he does go very close to it for photo ops. But because there's something very interesting that I found in release footage that I made a comment on in the Telegram group. So this. So just pay attention to if you're not gun nerds. I'll explain it to you, but just pay attention to what type pattern of rifle all these Wagner troops are. I don't know if these are his personal security detail or if these are just professional Wagner fighters or what, but just pay attention to their choice of pattern of rifle.
Ну что, поедем, да?
А? Да? Сейчас собираемся.
О, здорово. Привет. Привет, здравствуй. Тебя как зовут?
And then if you're not quite a gun nerd, I'll explain it to you. But then whenever you get a look at it, just pay attention to the pattern of rifle that Prigozhin is carrying with him.
Вова. Что, шоколадки дать вам? Сухпайков.
Говори всегда, что тебя зовут не Вова, а Владимир.
Владимир.
Владимир, это звучит.
So we'll just go into it now. All the Wagner troops around him are carrying AR pattern rifles, Western style rifles, American style rifles, all ARs. And here you can can't see the full rifle, but you can see clearly this is an AK pattern rifle, and there's no optics on it, whereas a couple of them didn't have optics, but he's got optics, so you can tell this guy's almost certainly going into the fight. These guys are almost certain going into the fight, which feeds into another thing that I've kind of picked up on a while, is that professional Wagner, the guys who sign up for contracts have been in Wagner for a while, like their professional corps, we've seen this in Soledar, and we've seen it in other footage around Bakhmut. If they can, they prefer to use AR pattern rifles, which I guess kind of says something for the old AK versus AR M16 debate. But a lot of these rifles, from my understanding, are captures. They've captured them from the Ukrainians. They're battlefield pickups, or they've been captured from Ukrainian stock. So that's the understanding, is that Wagner fighters, if they can, they pick up AR pattern rifles. So if that's the rifle that they're preferred to use whenever they go into combat, and then Prigozhin's walking about with an old AK-74-2U without an optic, that kind of gave me, I knew he was never really going to be going, I knew he was never really going to be going into, like, personally fight himself, but it's kind of one of the giveaways that this whole combat get up with this bandolier with mags and all this kind of stuff is more of a bit of a show for the public than it is a practical concern. So that was just my little autistic noticing there.
Это дядя Рома. Привет. Ты будешь за старшего, он будет дальше управлять себе.
And not only that, maybe some of you American guys could probably ID this a bit more, but if I'm not mistaken, this guy is carrying a Glock. He's got a Glock tapped in his chest strap there. The Glock being an Austrian-made, predominantly Western handgun. I don't believe the Glock handgun was ever really adopted in Russia, either by law enforcement or by military. The Russians have a pretty extensive and well-developed small arms industry that supply their own handguns. So the fact that these Wagner fighters are walking about with American or Western pattern rifles, and then he's also carrying a Glock, I don't know. Maybe it's just because this is the stuff that they find. Maybe the Ukrainians are walking about with so many 5.56 and 9mm ammo that it's more useful for them to start carrying about Glocks and ARs. But maybe I'm being too autistic. With that, I should also clarify, I'm not actually autistic. That's a meme. I had a family member who disturbingly watches my streams, hear me once say I was autistic, and now he wants me to get tested. I'm not autistic. Whenever I say I'm autistic, that's an epic meme, guys. So, but with my internet autism, noticing just these little things, I just find it an interesting little thing to caveat. Yes, Michael, that is a Glock. Yes, it's a Glock. Looks like a full-sized frame. I would guess a Glock 17. Yeah. So, not that I've gone down the full roster of what the Russian police and military and private military corporations equip themselves with, but I just find it interesting that they seem to be defaulting to Western standard equipment.
Ты будешь за старшего, он будет дальше управлять себе. Он генерал Росгвардии. Правда, бывший, поэтому хороший.
So that's a good view. That's slightly identifiable AK-74-2U. That I think might be, I'm not too good at differentiating between, but maybe an HK, was it 416, or it's an AR pattern rifle. That's an AR pattern rifle with a lot of gear on it. So.
Покажи дядю Рому-то. Снимай маску, ничего страшного, если дети будут пугаться. Да. А вас как?
Look at the body armor as well. Plate carriers look Western as well, rather than Russian models. I'll take your word for it, because I'm not too versed on the specific distinctions between Western plate carriers and Russian ones. But I mean, again, if there's a guy in here who knows this, I mean, like, this looks to me like a K-bar knife. I don't know. Maybe I'm just going too far autistic at the moment, but if that's a K-bar knife, I mean, like, it would tell me that, I mean, like, these helmets as well, are these not like Western? I know the Russians have an equivalent helmet as well, but I know plenty of you guys out there are autistic who could probably identify this all stuff. A lot of you guys, I know there's quite a few military vets in my channels. Maybe some of you guys have actually worn this specific kind of equipment and could probably let me know on that. But it's just something whenever I watch these, I just kind of picked up and noticed. I'm a noticer of many things.
Вы рисковали жизнью,
Вот эти люди, которые мы останутся, мы знали, на что шли. Мы хотели показать, что мы в городе, мы не уезжаем никуда. И не сломались. И ребята, штурмовики, они сумки наши тащат. Ну зачем им наши сумки, как говорят?
Michael, that's a Glock knife, I believe. I had no idea Glock does knife. You know, I know you can't really go into like handles of knives, but yeah, the handle looks pretty much, yeah, it looks like an exact match. Hole, same style of grooving in the handle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's a bit of the hilt has been bent in, so yeah, it looks like a Glock knife. Well done, chat. Got it. So yeah, seems to be, I mean, seems to be very little actual Russian equipment these guys seem to be carrying, aside from his AK pattern rifle. The Glock knives, Glock handguns, and AR pattern rifles.
Ну, я был труден, честно говоря.
Володь, держи тебя на ошибку. А вот ЧВК «Вагнер». Да ладно.
Мне скинет.
Видишь?
Собака.
Да?
Да, смотрите. У меня в кармане.
О, а это у тебя фирменная будет, видишь?
Oh, and forget which is this. It's in this video. Put a quick.
У людей не было мозга.
Don't read Cyrillic, so I can't really comment much on the book. So, that was just a little footage of Prigozhin. Like I say, maybe it's quite in depth and autiste for a lot of you guys who are a bit more layman. I mean, I'm pretty lay at this stuff, but just some stuff I noticed in the footage and got particularly interested in postulating over. So I think this is, like I say, I think this is part of Prigozhin's wider public profile that he's building up. Also, I posted this earlier. There was claims that Prigozhin said that started advocating for Russia seeking an end to the war. I need to walk that back a bit. Apparently, a lot of the English-speaking commentators, whenever they came across the article that he wrote that seemed to imply that he was advocating an end to the war, is that he was actually building up a straw man that anti-war elements in Russia are using, and he was building up a straw man to then knock it down. So he wasn't advocating an end to the war, he was actually breaking down one of the excuses to end the war. So just while it's in my head, just to go back and correct the post I made a couple days ago on that. Prigozhin did not advocate the end of the war. He was building up a straw man to knock it down, to essentially endorse the continuation of the war. So yeah, don't know. I think I dealt with that in the last stream, but he seems to be pretty convinced that there's going to be a fairly large Ukrainian counteroffensive. He, in this post, he cited that the Ukrainians had between 200 to 400,000 men that they can commit to the upcoming counteroffensive, which would be pretty large. I'm a bit skeptical of some of that claims. Depends how he's dividing up those men. Are they going to be the frontline troops? Are they going to be the support staff behind the line? Who knows? But he's given out a pretty big figure. Prigozhin, I don't understand why Prigozhin and Strelkov are fighting, because the two of them seem to have a far more realistic and sober assessment of the war than official Russian state media and a lot of Russian commentators. It seems to be some kind of personal beef that they have. Apparently both of them served in Serbia with in Bosnia with the Serbs during the Bosnian War together, and they seem to have some kind of professional animosity over that. But it just my little gonna take there. It's because I think like if Strelkov and Prigozhin sat down and did a podcast together, or like did an interview together, I think that would be a very, although it'd probably get suppressed and get them shit canned in Russia, to be honest, at this stage. But I think that would probably be a very well worth watched endeavor. You'd have Strelkov's pretty bleak outlook for Russian. Having another brain aneurysm for Russian projections. And then you have Strelkov, who still thinks that they're going to win, but he's a lot more sober about the costs and the opposition to get there. So, but nonetheless, Strelkov, again, is he looking potentially to be in the running for Putin's eventual replacement? Is he looking for a governorship of an oblast? Is he looking to become part of the inner council of the Siloviki? Who knows? But like Prigozhin is clearly got his eyes on a very public position in Russian society going forward from this. Because I mean, before the events of February 24th, and in fact not even that, since when did Wagner really start to appear on the scene? I think it was around about the Battle of Popasna. So before May or June last year, I mean, who had heard of Prigozhin? Now, if you have any sort of basic understanding of the conflict, you have to know of Prigozhin. I mean, Prigozhin is far more well known than a lot of Russian and Ukrainian generals, like even the commanding generals. I think a lot more people probably know of Prigozhin rather than they do Gerasimov, or on the Ukrainian side, people like Zhioli or Sergei. I can't pronounce his second name. The second in command who's in charge of the Bakhmut front at the moment. So that was the spiel about Yevgenovich. Now we will progress into everyone's favorite part of the stream. Not a lot to say here, but we'll fly through it. It is the map part of the stream. So the only real things out of note that I've got really to report is the Ukrainians reported that they launched a bit of another probing attack. I think it was south of Velika Novosilka. They claim to have retaken 4 villages along the line of control. Again, I'm not too sure if it was specifically there or if it was further along near Halailupur. But that's what the Ukrainians claimed. It seems the Ukrainians are stepping up probing attacks on the Zaporozhye front. Again, is this because this is where this counteroffensive is going to fall, or is it because they want the Russians to think that's where it's going to fall? You can say at that stage, but that's kind of the big news I've heard out of the Zaporozhye front. Although, still slowly working through the tank video. But T-55 has appeared in Russian service in Zaporozhye. There's some footage and videos of T-55s on Russian flatbed train cars moving up towards Tomak and Melitopol, and then there was some pictures of T-55s in the field. I think these are going to be more in reserve. I'm not expecting these things to be at the front line. A tank is a tank at the end of the day. It's something that fires a very big shell and can cause a lot of damage. So no matter how old it is, there is some utility to it, but still, that aside, I can't see T-55s emerging at direct front. So I think they'll probably be kept in second and rear echelon roles as a bit of a fallback measure, maybe as a bit of a more defensive, to build up defenses along certain points along the front. So that's kind of how I expect T-55 to be utilized. So, haven't really heard much out of Avdiivka since my last stream, so I really haven't got a lot to tell you there, although what are Lee's saying? Just, pardon me. It's just a general update from the Ukrainian Chief of Staff. And moving up to Bakhmut, the Wagner offensive has sort of slowed down a bit. Oh, pardon me. Oh. Feeling a bit strange at the The Wagner offensive in Bakhmut has sort of slowed for reasons I'm not fully aware of at the moment. It's not reflected in this map. From my understanding is that Wagner have taken the train station and they began crossing the rail lines. But that is about the only territorial change that has happened in Bakhmut. Ukrainian reinforcements, not that there appears to be a lot of them, but Ukrainian reinforcements and supply still are entering the Ukrainian-held part of the city at this stage. So, what I said in the last stream... Oh dear. Forgive me, pardon me. I'm not too sure what's going on there. What I said in the last stream, where it appeared that Wagner had properly put the city under siege, doesn't seem to have properly come to pass. It still appears that Ukrainian resupply efforts are getting through into the city in a large enough fashion to keep Ukrainian troops combat effective in the areas itself. So, again, not really a lot of updates on Bakhmut itself, which is a bit surprising because it looked like the Ukrainian positions were in terminal collapse a week or so ago, but they seem to... I really don't know what's going on with me at the moment. I'm falling apart in stream. What was I just saying? I've got Alzheimer's kicking in. It seemed that the Ukrainian positions were in collapse about a week ago, but whether it's because Wagner isn't actually pushing the initiative or if it's Ukrainian resistance that's holding them back, like I say, there hasn't been a lot of territorial change. Apart from my understanding that the train station is indeed under Wagnerian control at this stage. Although that's not to say that Ukrainians aren't resorting to desperate measures. So I'll play some footage from the channel just to give you an idea of what Bakhmut is looking like at the moment. So this is drone footage of the city from recent days. So if I have my geography... Go away, Brave. If I have my geography right, from my understanding, is this... This is the Chasiv Yar road here. This is the road from Chasiv Yar. So the MiG monument is just up there. So on the map, I believe the drone is flying somewhere in this area, and that is the Chasiv Yar road. That is where the MiG monument is. And then if this was Google Earth, you could see it better. This is all those Soviet era commie blocks and apartment complexes here that is in that video. So where is there? So that is from my understanding where this footage is coming from. So that's the rail lines, that's the train station. So look, whenever this turns to the right, that is to the south, the Chasiv Yar road, which from my understanding is roads here, heading up in this direction here. So if I've got my orientation and bearings right, that's the direction this footage is coming from. So that's from Bakhmut in recent days. There's another bit of footage. More for the Russian tank video I'm slowly but surely putting together. This is the other footage I was looking for, like I was saying. The situation for Ukrainians are pretty grim, so they're resorting to desperate measures. This is footage of apartment complexes that the Ukrainians are claimed to have effectively detonated. So, just to give you an idea of why they're doing this, as you can see, the apartment complexes, these old Soviet-era apartment complexes, are some of the biggest, tallest buildings in the area. What the Ukrainians could be doing is by destroying these, they're denying high ground to Wagner. So if Wagner come in and took those apartment complexes, they could go up on them, have very good observation. They could use them as firing positions onto Ukrainian troops further into the city. Just by physically destroying them, it removes that potential operation. So if the Ukrainians can't hold the buildings anymore and using them defensively as high points, by destroying them, it just removes the ability for them to be used against them. Also, another aspect, by just turning these into complete rubble, it's going to slow down potentially Russian advances in this area. It's going to sound a bit strange, because how is a big mound of rubble not cover? Well, you have to think about, if the buildings were still there, Russian troops could just go in and use the corridors, use them as cover and push up. If it's just a big mound of rubble, to get over it, they have to physically climb over it, and that'll put them in sight of Ukrainian troops further back that could fire upon them. So, yeah, the Ukrainians are starting to detonate buildings in Bakhmut. Pretty desperate element of trying to hold the line. And just while you're here, new cope cages are dropping. Both sides are embracing the cope cage. While they didn't seem to be particularly good at stopping things like Javelin and other advanced anti-tank systems, top-down munitions, cope cages have a new lease of life. Has pretty effective ways to halt loitering munitions and grenades and small munitions dropped from drones. So this is a pretty extensive version put here on this Russian artillery gun, an Atsika or Gozivka. I'm not too sure which one that is, but I'm sure my pronunciation of it was utterly horrific. But that's a creative example there. Just to give you, there's pretty good footage that came out today to show you why they are starting to adopt these in large measures. This is footage from a Russian T-72. As you can see, it still has a quote-unquote cope cage, but it didn't quite work here with its loading ammunition, because what is going to happen here is this tank is going to be hit by a small suicide drone. Oh, there it is. I mean, in there. And I believe this drone is probably not coming out too good here, but I believe this drone is being identified as an American pattern one. Almost certainly didn't do any actual damage to the tank. It looks like it detonated a block of explosive reactive armor, and the explosion was harmlessly projected outwards and away from the tank. But as you could imagine, if it did hit this or any other drones hit one of these grills on top of the tank, well, it effectively harmlessly disperse the energy and save a bit of ERA block. But on a lighter skinned vehicle, these cope cages are proving to be fairly effective. That's from Sudan. But on top of this, here we go. Interesting development. This is a Russian T-90M breakthrough tank operating in Bakhmut. Over back to there was a very again, I wouldn't have picked this up because I'm not exactly a massive tank artist, but underneath this turret is an RPG like mesh. So if a rocket comes in, skirts underneath the angled armor of the turret, and it can't get lodged in actually into the tank itself and cause damage on the turret ring. There is like a little metal like netting. Interestingly, this crew, and you can see a bit more clearly here, have applied ERA blocks to that netting, which was picked up a lot by observers. Quite the reasoning behind that. A couple of people, well, a couple of the observers that I watch are a little confused as to why they might do that. Is it because the Russians are starting to discover that the anti-RPG net is not quite as effective anymore, or was this just one very zealous crew with a lot of spare ERA bricks decided to put them wherever they could? Yeah, the little autistic thing I picked up was interesting. And also, a lot of footage is coming out of the Ukrainians training in the west of the country. The army is looking more and more like an American division from the late 90s, maybe the late 80s. A lot of Humvees, Bradleys, Abrams, Strikers starting to turn up in being trained on Ukrainians. But this is small group tactics. This is mechanized light infantry tactics. This is what the Ukrainians seem to be training up on. This is what the Ukrainians used in Kharkov during their lightning offensive here. So the implication here is that the Ukrainians seem to think that the light infantry offensive might be the thing that wins them the day in the coming spring/summer offensive that's going to come up. I'm a bit skeptical of that because the Russians are heavily entrenched in their position. I think they're probably going to need to rely a bit more on tanks and heavy armored vehicles as opposed to these light mobile infantry squads. Although maybe they're training up the light infantry to exploit any potential breakthroughs that heavier Ukrainian divisions and battalions manage to penetrate Russian lines with. But I just found this interesting, this footage showing Ukrainians training up on their troops in the west of the country. So as the months and the weeks move on, the Ukrainian military is looking less and less like a Soviet legacy and more like an American or Western NATO unit military with all the Hummers, Strikers, Bradleys, and Western tanks that they're starting to come into possession of. Is there anything else I want? I think that is it for like Bakhmut and Ukraine updates. Like I say, not exactly a very extensive one this week, but there doesn't seem to have been a lot of movement on the front. This is a T90M. This must be up in the Crimean area. Speaking of Crimea, there really isn't much to talk about in Crimea. There hasn't been for months. There's a lot of footage that comes out, but footage like that of the Russians and sometimes the Ukrainians using tanks for what are effectively like point-blank engagements. But there really doesn't seem to be any progress on either side in terms of ground taken or lost. The big Russian push in the north of Kharkov towards Kupiansk, it seems to have long since fizzled out. I've not really heard anything from that area in a while. So, the only other thing are stuff behind the lines, which I've got another stream I'm planning to do of there for that. But unless I am missing anything, I believe that is, oh, pardon me, the front update, the Ukraine update effectively done. Let's see. Do these guys can it would make my stuff a bit easier if they have a Sudan. It's only updates really about the Kharkiv. I'm not too sure how I'll do the Sudan update. I don't think the map really helped me with that. We're done with the map for the moment. So we'll now move on to the Sudan bit. With the caveat, I really am not an expert. I like the Israeli stuff, not a big expert on Sudan. Have a bit of general knowledge about the country, but in terms of the actual politics of the place and the like, not an expert in it. Still looking up on it, and the recent outbreak of hostilities has kind of caught a lot of people by surprise. So with that, I'm going to give you my kind of quick and fast take from my understanding at the moment. But I am still like researching and looking into this stuff to build up a bit more knowledge, and I might do a dedicated stream to Sudan. I'm not too sure at the moment because Sudan is only like really tangentially related to Russia and Ukraine, as opposed to like the like country streams that I have done on like Moldova, Belarus, Finland, to a degree Bulgaria. You know, like those are countries that are pretty close to Ukraine and pretty directly affected and invested in what happens in the war. Like Sudan is like an African country that's always at war in some form or another, and it's kind of pretty tangentially related to Russia and Ukraine. So not that I have like a criteria of how I do this stuff. I'm kind of, I don't know. I don't know if it kind of deserves its own country stream. I don't know. I'm curious as to what you guys think about that, because well, it's the other country streams and stuff. It's because like it's stuff I know. It's kind of stuff I already have an idea about. The Israeli stuff I kind of got by because I was very kindly put in touch with a guy who actually knows and is Israeli, so he could come on and give us a far more in depth. So I guess this is kind of the shout, probably a long shot, but I mean, if you're Sudanese, you know any Sudanese people, and they're happy to come on stream and they speak English to an acceptable quality where people can understand them, please do put me in touch with them, especially if they have a fairly good insight of what's happening in Sudan at the moment. But that out of the way, so from my understanding, so Sudan is a country that pretty much since independence has been no offense to Sudanese people, but a bit of a shithole. Before it became independence, it was held in a condominium, which means it was in joint administration between the British and the Egyptian governments, became its own independent country. Very rapidly, I believe it then rotated through a communist/socialist regime into a pretty hardcore Islamist regime. Became a sort of very pro like Al-Qaeda terrorist aligned regime in the 90s. I believe Osama bin Laden stayed there for a while. The south of the country, or of the land country, was populated by Christians. That helped spur on the Darfur conflict, if people remember, whenever all the charities were going about raising money for genocide and starvation in Darfur. I believe that's largely because it's predominantly Christian down there, and the Muslim theocratic, like Islamist government and various Muslim militias and Christian militias all fought each other, and just another one of these nameless African conflicts no one really understands and really doesn't have much international significance. Long story short, the Christian South broke away in 2013, 2019, I think South Sudan became independent. Broke away, became its own independent state. Sudan is just kind of like a quasi-failed state, was powerless to stop this to any real degree. So the two Sudans break away. North Sudan kind of comes under a military dictatorship under what's his name? Is it Abu Abassa? Omar al-Bashir. Omar al-Bashir is like the military strongman who is the longtime president of Sudan. The country falls apart under his rule towards the end of his tenure. South Sudan goes independent. He is removed in a coup in 2019. I think it is. Have a look. Yeah, 2019. 2019, he's removed in a coup. A very tentative democratic government comes in for a short period of time, which in turn is then ousted in its own coup. I believe in 2001. 2001. In, pardon me, 2021. Was 2021, wasn't it? But well, nonetheless, very politically unstable. The division of power is pretty diffuse. There is a military government comes in. The military assumes control, but the military itself is kind of fractured. So you have the sort of standing Sudanese military of the Sudanese army, the Sudanese Air Force, the Sudanese Navy, and the Republican Guard. Alongside this, because of things like the conflict in Darfur and elsewhere, you have a lot of militia groups, paramilitary type units, which are affiliated with the government. They'll be like pro-government or pro-army militias, but they're not part of the army, or they're not part of like an officially endorsed arm of the state. So they might have endorsement from the government and they might be pro-government, but they're not like the army. They're not part of the police. They're not part of like the gendarmerie or something like that. The biggest of those movements is the Rapid Support Force. Pardon me. It's where my throat always seems to die around it. How long? Or yeah. It always seems to really go at the... pardon me. At the second hour. The Rapid Support Force, from my understanding, was built up to support the Sudanese army during the conflict in Darfur. It supported the military in the coup. Can you post a map of the areas experiencing conflict in Sudan? Do I think I might have conveniently shared one into the Telegram. Because yes, so this is the current situation apparently as of today. So this is the Darfur area down here. And as you can see, this map is showing that is a stronghold of the Rapid Support Forces, which again, from my understanding, and this would seem to corroborate it, was a militia group that was raised, a pro-government militia group that was raised up to support government and army efforts in fighting in the Darfur. As part of the agreements out of the transition from the military government into a more democratic government, I believe, from my understanding, is that the Rapid Support Forces were to be integrated formally into the army, because Sudan's was going through a democratic transition. There seems to have been a falling out between there wasn't agreements, or one side feels that the Rapid Support Forces feel that the integration isn't going at a fast enough pace, and that they're being sold out in the various deals that they carved out for themselves with the Transitional Military Council. And as part of this is they effectively tried to orchestrate a coup 2 days ago. They stormed various positions in Khartoum, the airport. They attempted to take the military intelligence center. Other strategic, like the presidency, they tried to take the presidency. Large gun battles broke out with the standing army and standing government troops. while we'll come back to this map, I'll actually just show some footage that's come out of Sudan the past few days. This is footage of Khartoum airport. This is apparently a Saudi airliner that was destroyed on the tarmac during fighting. This is an Egyptian. These are Egyptian MiGs that were captured by rapid support forces at an airbase that were taken. That was a government MiG purported to be bombing rebel rapid support force positions outside of Khartoum. So the Egyptian military had a presence in Sudan. I believe they were there as training up Sudanese troops. These are Egyptian pilots and ground personnel that were captured by the rapid support forces. This caused a lot of concern in Egypt. The Egyptian military at one point was said to be mobilizing in the south of the country. From my understanding is that an agreement has been made where the Egyptian personnel will leave Egypt, leave Sudan and return to Egypt. No word on what's going to happen to all these Egyptian MiGs that were captured by the rebels. Where's the rest of the footage? Oh, there's a bit more footage of it. I swear I could have or I shared more than this. There's footage of fighting in the streets. Okay, here we go. Well, this is news of this is the Sudanese army. It's reported that the Sudanese army took Port Sudan, which is the country's main maritime hub. This is some footage of this. As you can see, not exactly the most sophisticated army. They're driving about in literal technicals, the very definition of the word. Their armor, their heavy armor, T-55s. Ironic given the Russian stuff, but this is kind of... They do have some T-72s, but, you know, this is not exactly the sign of a very sophisticated military if they're driving about in those. Where's the other footage? There is some footage somewhere where... No, that's got words that I can't show on straight. Ignore that. Don't read that, YouTube. There's more of this stuff. Yeah, here we go. So this is footage from Khartoum, the fighting in Khartoum. Low-flying MiG-29s of the Sudanese Air Force performing pretty low attack runs. Some footage had them doing gun runs, using their guns on targets on the ground. This is the army that was mobilized into the Khartoum in recent days. Footage of a jet firing off rockets at targets on the ground. Pretty incredible footage. So the long and skinny of all this is that Sudan is now effectively in civil war. The coup seems to have failed. The UN is trying to broker ceasefire agreements. If they fail to come through, it's pretty much guaranteed and effective at this stage that Sudan is now in a state of civil war. And where's the map? And as you can see, the rapid support force, the Darfur conflict's been going on for decades, so I can't really see the Sudanese army going in there and establishing control anytime soon. Pretty significant swaths of territory each side holds. And then, as this map indicates, and I would have no idea to comment on what these rebel groups are, but there's other rebel organizations and insurgencies active in the country, so Sudan looks to be teetering straight into civil war, potentially back into outright. Oh, it already is killed state, but not really a change in recent Sudanese history. But where does this mean in geopolitics? The Nile. If there's much damage done to the Nile, the waters from the Nile feed down to Ethiopia and agriculture and all that further south. Also, I believe there's some major hydroelectric projects going on funded by the Chinese on the, I think this is the Blue Nile, this far south, is it? But the Nile River, which are pretty strategic. And also, there are claims that Wagner is helping both sides of the conflict. So I've seen some Western sources saying that the attempted coup was effectively like a Wagner planned and orchestrated and endorsed operation. And then I've also seen other sources that are saying that Wagner and the Russians are supporting the Sudanese government. So again, that's kind of my fast and hot take at the moment on it. Sorry, it's not very inclusive. It's not really in depth. Don't really know a lot about it. That's my understanding, my base understanding of it at the moment. I'll look into it a bit more and see if it warrants its own stream. But that's kind of the skinny on it at the moment. Like I say, it's kind of only tangentially related to Russia and Ukraine at the moment. So it's not usually something I would pay really close attention to. But just flagging it up as something to pay attention to. Where I think it could probably be of more influence is the situation in the Middle East. I'm not too sure because Sudan is pretty much uniformly Sunni, so I don't really think the Shia-Sunni conflict would come into it. But just while we're on the topic, another big geopolitical thing to flag out for major failing of the Biden administration. There is a pretty in-depth rapprochement between the Iranians and the Saudis at the moment. Iran has invited the Saudi king to a state visit to Iran, which is pretty incredible, to be honest. Saudi and Iran have been fighting a pretty hot Cold War between each other in places like Yemen, to a degree in places like Syria. It's known as the Sunni-Shia conflict, the Iranians siding with the Shia, the Saudis usually siding with the Sunnis. This rapprochement between both countries spells pretty major geopolitical implications for it. It could see a significant quietening down and stabilization of the Middle East if a lot of these conflicts start to peter out. Like if the conflict in Yemen, if the Iranians and the Saudis are stopped outright funding that, maybe that could come to some form of ceasefire rectification. Bashar al-Assad, based Bashar, Syria has been undergoing a pretty successful normalization process across the Arab world at the moment. The UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, I believe the Saudis as well, the Jordanians are all lining up to re-establish regular relations with Damascus, which benefits Iran. Quite how this all relates to Israel, because Israel has also gone through a fairly successful, especially during the Trump years, normalization process with Arab states. So that's the big thing, as opposed to Sudan, that I'm kind of keeping a bit of a watchful eye on is the Iranian-Saudi axis there, namely because that can really influence things in OPEC. That would really have the Western world even more over the barrel, so to speak, pardon the pun, whenever it comes to oil prices. Whenever our OPEC can really start to fiddle those a bit more with Iranian, a lot more Iranian cooperation. Because you have to understand as well, with Russia kind of out of the Western oil picture, OPEC can really start to dictate prices to Western oil consumers, hydrocarbon consumers, especially whenever the Western powers have announced that they are going to keep the $60 oil cap on barrels of Russian oil. It's kind of pushing Russian oil away from Western markets and into places like India, China, certain countries in Africa as well, Asian countries. So that's the big thing I'm kind of keeping an eye on. So With that, that's kind of the things I was looking to talk about in this latest stream. So I guess with that, we'll go have a look at super chats, questions you guys might have. So with that, I'll do a little shill, guys. If you are so minded, please do go a super chat. Before we get into that, while I still have a lot of your guys' attention, if you're still there. I did a thing. I made a link tree. So instead of the meandering links of all kinds of stuff that I usually have in my videos, I'm throwing the link up into the chat now. Please do go check out my link tree. You've got Telegram, YouTube, Twitter, Odyssey, Instagram, my PayPal. I've also rejigged PayPal. Hopefully it works here. So it's a bit more easier to run for people. So this is for people, because I know some people seem to get really upset whenever I like chill. But I mean, like, I can't do this all for free, guys. I need to chill once in a while. But for those people who are asking to make it a bit easier, here you go. You can do it one-off, weekly, monthly. I would really appreciate it if you could actually throw something into the monthly, just so I can budget each week. But that's the new PayPal layout. It looks a bit more easier and better to run than the old layout. Coffee and Cash App, so there are links there. I might add to them in the coming days. Another thing to flag up, I'll post about it in the channel. I'm thinking of doing like a community gaming thing every Sunday. I might like pick a random obscure game. What? This? Yeah, I'm just going to. Yeah, I've muted your account. Don't mess stream again. So I'm thinking of doing like a community gaming stream where every Sunday I might throw up like a game. If you guys want to come play it if you happen to have that game. For that, I might make a Discord, but as I said, whenever I first floated the idea, the Discord will not be like the place where I post like updates and stuff. It will be purely for like community stuff and gaming. So I might set that up tomorrow. Not the Discord, but the sort of gaming aspect. I'm thinking of doing something like Annenberg or Verdun, or maybe Hell Let Loose, like the community gaming thing. That's kind of the idea I'm playing about with there. With that, please do go check out the link me tree. Greatly appreciate it. Karatakos Justes for €5. Thank you so much. Little sticker thing. You had a big fat paycheck, you could afford that Windows fee. Yeah, I could. There you go. If that's what it takes, I'm too poor to activate Windows, guys. Throw shackles into the pot. Michael is not MI5. He's definitely MI6. I wish. I think the Davushka scandal is even bigger than Vasquez. It certainly is on Twitter, but that's because all the NAFO people are furiously retweeting over it. It's pretty embarrassing for her, but then again, she shouldn't really have done what she did. But I think the Vasquez stuff involved probably a larger sum of money, and in terms of actual on-the-ground impact, I think he's probably impacted, like, I don't want to say probably gotten people killed, but, you know, like, Donbass Davushka is like someone away off in Washington who shipped posts on Telegram and Twitter. They're not actually in the combat zone, although they claim to be, but they're not actually like in the combat zone, potentially taking, I know, defrauding people from a charity potentially falls into that if she actually did that, but You know, as opposed to James Vasquez, who was turning up in combat zones and swanning about and then taking money directly given to frontline units and then spaffing it up a wall in a poor house in Lvov, whereas it should have gone to like buying body armor. What's the name? Link for the first Russian song. It's known as the Warsaw song. Whenever I finish the stream, I'll throw the link to the opening songs in the description below. You're also dealing about what people get over it. I kind of have a public facing like persona. I kind of have to do that. I need to build these parasocial relationships with people so that they'll throw money to me so I can afford the bills. I'll have to look into like, you know, some YouTubers like putting like little earmark things on their videos so people know which part to skip to in the video. I'm gonna have to look into that for this video because it's patently aware some people are not particularly interested in the Troon stuff, which is fair enough. So I'll have to look into try and get that up on this video. Integrating modern optic for me. Night vision, illuminators, lasers on an AK is an absolute chore relative to a modern AR. It can be done with an AK, but you're hamstringing yourself. Yeah, well, ARs just kind of as AR pattern rifles, just as a matter of course, are equipped with Picatinny rails these days, aren't they? The AK-12 even come equipped with a rail. The AK-12 does come with a rail as an inbuilt feature, but the AK-12 has a pretty poor reputation. I guess the vast majority of AK pattern rifles are AK-74s, which predate rails and the like, I guess, at least in the military setting. Right. But saying that, optics and night vision and stuff is actually surprisingly rarity in Ukraine, so maybe rails just aren't as much of a factor whenever it comes to kit. Like even then, some of those Wagner fighters, some of the ARs had no optics or such. So whenever I see Russians with optics or stuff, it's usually pretty elite units, elements of the VDV or Spetsnaz units. Certainly not a ubiquitous part of Russian or Ukrainian equipment. Wasn't he a cook? Yes, Prigozhin kind of got a lot of his wealth as becoming a restaurateur. Why he's a Putin chef. Okay. Look at the body armor, read that earlier on. Maybe due to round size, AK-74 is larger than AK-70 or AK-47, AK-74. I think the very few AK-47s are probably going about its old AK-74, which are what, 5.56, aren't they? The Soviet equivalent round, I don't think they're the 7. Cartridge, yeah, the 5. Too familiar with 5.56. 5.45 by 39 round for the 74. Pretty much is equivalent round to the NATO 5.56. If not, I'm sure some of the young guys in chat will correct me if I'm wrong in that assertion. What else have we got? Block knife is used by Austrian here. It's just curious as to why they get it. I mean, like, did Prigozhin buy that knife, or are they just building up like Western sets of equipment from captures of Ukrainian stock? Michael, have you considered writing a book when the war is over? Not really. I mean, you see how I type. I can barely spell as it is. What would I write a book about? I can't justify writing a book. I haven't, like, what I do. I ship post on Telegram. Michael, I heard from pro-Russian channel that the T-55s are supposed to work as artillery support. I think artillery might be a bit too strong of a word, but yeah, probably as indirect fire. Although, I mean, the barrel and the gun on it's going to be pretty old by this stage. I can understand T-72s, T-80s, and T-90s doing indirect, potentially over the horizon fire, coordinated with a drone, maybe even T-64s. Could a T-55 really pull off that kind of stuff with any decent amount of accuracy? I'm not sure. But yeah, I could definitely see it in that sort of a role. I could see it like support roles. Free crypto what? Oh, that was from the ad. Yeah, I guess might as well flag that up while I'm at it. So I use Brave, guys. I use the Brave browser. Big emphasis on things like privacy and stuff, but also Brave uses a crypto called BAT. It gives out little tokens, so the more you use BAT, the more like you get. If you happen to use BAT and Brave and you don't really use your BAT, I might cheekily ask if you might consider just donating your BAT to me. Every little helps. So that's what the little advert that popped up earlier on is for. You sign up to Brave, they say, look, if you allow us to put up these little ads in the side of your screen, you earn a BAT token. And BAT builds up over the month, pays out. I think I'm due to get some BAT. So, I'll show you how it works. So if you get like Brave, so this is what it looks like for me. So like Twitter is a good example. So you like donate your BAT. So let's see, Dankula, base Dank. If I wanted to give Dank some BAT, this little icon comes up here. You click that and it shows up here. And I'm not too sure how it works if you don't like have Brave or whatever, but here it allows you to like send tips and donate a bit of BAT to people who your online content creators. So it's quite a nice little interesting system. If it'll ever take off, who knows? But yeah, if you happen to use Brave, some of your worthless BAT to me, I'm not going to turn it down. So Russia imported a lot more specialist weapons for the police. Accuracy International. So that's why all those Russian briefers in Counter-Strike are always no-scoping with ops. Have you seen the Black Cleopatra? I haven't watched it yet. I will. Doesn't ERA need a rigid backer to be effective? Wonder if it'd react properly with hanging loose like that. Really use weird weighted chains to protect the carver and the vein? I honestly wouldn't know. As I understand, speaking Arabic is, yeah, Sudan speaks Arabic. Sister Tenacious for $20 US. Thank you so much. Thank you for touching on Sudan. I just wish I could do it a bit more in depth. I'm looking into it, so if I build it up, and I might do a bit of a country stream on it. But I can't make any promises. Like I said, it's kind of only tangentially related to Russia and Ukraine. But I'll certainly be keeping an eye on it, forwarding stuff into the Telegram channel as things go on and the situation develops. Show me the Fug Shaker. And in prison. PayPal lets you keep more than YouTube. Yes, I think, yeah, because the other thing I've started up, and I'm probably going to, I was planning to introduce it on the gaming stream, because I kind of use the gaming stream to test out new stuff. YouTube takes like 33% of all super chats stuff that comes in that way, which is pretty, not gonna lie, whenever I got my first payout from YouTube after a year of barricading, I was thinking, oh wow, I'm gonna get all this money, and what came out was surprisingly a lot less. So if you're that obsessed and you don't want to give the abomination of Silicon Valley that much money, I'm not too sure what the exchange rate for PayPal is, but it's significantly lower than YouTube. So I mean, just on a purely selfish level, my personal preference would be for PayPal, Cash App, even Coffee, but beggars can't be choosers. AK-12 4-end isn't rich enough for IRMV lasers. Apparently AK-12 top country 0. You're River Commando, you better off. I can just remember during the opening stages of the war is that the Ukrainians captured some AK-12s, and their assessment of the rifle was pretty poor. They were not a big fan of it, and alongside that there was I've seen some reports where even the Russians themselves, the reliability problems, it wasn't tended to overheat some parts, and that the Spetsnaz unit that was operating it preferred to go back to older patterns like the AK-101 or AK-101. What's the AK-101? That was the 5.56 export version, wasn't it? The AK-101 that went into Russian military service, or it was an older pattern of Kalashnikov pattern rifle that this particular unit decided to go back to because they really didn't like the AK-12. Mr. Sister Fister, for €5, have some shekels. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. Is Wagner not going to complain about ammo now? They haven't for a while. Whatever the politics and the blockage of ammo supplies from the army long since was rectified. It depends on the AK. Some are easier to mount. Accessories too. Wagner use a lot of 9F MVGs, 5.45. If that's just at me, if I'm not mistaken, was it the AK-1? I'm pretty sure it was the AK-101 that was like specifically geared for a NATO round. It was for the export market. Sure, off the top of my head. But that's it. I don't know if I'm not too sure if they've stuck around, but if there was any of the feminists in here that followed me from YouTube, hi, thank you for joining my little community. You'll probably not stay long. We probably have pretty different, extremely radical, different politics from each other on a whole range of issues, but it's nice to stand with you in solidarity against the eternal truth. So, with that, I've got a 500 followers on Twitter now, 502. One milestone. With that, guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming. I'd ask if you might give a like to the channel, and if you're not subscribed, maybe consider subscribing. I know these streams tend to be a bit bare bones, but I hope you kind of seen at the start. I'm playing about with video editing, slowly trying to upskill in all kinds of ways. So I hope these streams are a bit better than what they were whenever I first started doing this last year. So hopefully, as time goes by, little by little, they'll build up into being something that's not complete dog poop. Ukrainian soldiers had an incident at a training ground in Poland. How did they manage this? How do you physically pop a turret out of a leopard? Looks like, looking at this damage on the barrel here, it looks like it might have struck another tank. That might have popped the turret out. Must have been some force to have done it. Like, look, it is physically completely popped out of the vehicle. But how? Looks like the barrel connected with a passing tank or other heavy vehicles attached to the entire turret. I would have thought the turret would have been a bit more in, like, I mean, what is the turret? Just, are they like battleship turrets where they're not actually like physically connected into the tank and they just sort of sit to like sort of, I don't know how to describe. So World War II battleship turrets, like whenever battleships sank and they flipped over while going down, is the turret would just really drop out of the vessel because there was like nothing physically holding the turret in apart from gravity. Is that the same for tank turrets, for Leopard turrets? Surely not. Surely there must be like some kind of mechanical process that holds the turret in place. But this genuinely looks like it is just completely popped out. And going by the damage, it must have hit another tank. Heavy vehicle, like that this post is saying, and that force of it just popped it straight out. Imagine being the crew of this fucking thing, especially if you were in the turret when it happened. Oh.
No zobacz, co kurwa narobiliście.
No to ja tego nie zrobiłem.
A kto kierowcą kurwa jest?
Mówiłem, że ja tego nie chcę ten.
A kto prowadził wóz?
Chorąży, bo powiedział tak, ja
A z
mówię...
jakiej racji kurwa daje się wóz? Ile razy tłumaczyłem?
Ja powiedziałem, że...
Kurwa mać! No zobacz, co kurwa narobiliście.
No to ja tego nie zrobiłem.
A kto kierowcą kurwa jest?
Mówiłem, że ja tego nie chcę
A
ten.
kto prowadził wóz?
Chorąży, bo powiedział tak, ja
A z
mówię...
jakiej racji kurwa daje się wóz? Ile razy tłumaczyłem?
Ja powiedziałem,
Jest
że...
kierowcą kurwa ty i żaden chuj nie ma bez mojej wiedzy dostawać.
Panie Chorąży, ja powiedziałem tak, to pan Chorąży mi nie kazał nikomu dawać. A on mnie wywalił.
Jak ty wywalił? To trzeba było kurwa wziąć i przylecieć do mnie, się nie ruszać. Jakim kurwa, zobacz co narobiłeś. Wóz konserwacji kurwa, zobacz co narobiłeś. Pokuje się, wiesz kurwa, nie twoje.
Andrzeju, nie denerwuj się.
Jak mam się nie denerwować?
Zaraz wyklepiemy.
Na pewno już nie wyklepiesz
No
kurwa.
to wyciągniemy z mojego wozu i damy tobie. Spokojnie.
Takiego błotnika już nie dostanę.
No to kupimy spraja i będziemy malować.
Zbraja, czemu się kurwa rwiecie, co nie wasze? I żaden żołnierz kurwa nie siedzi za was i dowodzi. I kurwa powiedziałem, że nie ma. Tłumaczyłem 1000 razy. Ale. Kurwa człowiek dwa bardziej jako żonę kurwa.
Obviously not the same vehicle, but...
Są kurwa ty i żaden chuj nie ma bez...
Well, training on Leopard seems to be going well. can't keep on top of Ukrainian here. I didn't really mention it, but yeah, Bradleys are starting to turn up in numbers in Ukraine, and fancy Ukrainian pixel camo. Quite faster than a lot of people seem to have expected. I always want to post about that, but I never got around to it. Not later. Yeah, I'm just kind of prevaricating at the moment. So,
Union with Prussia, and in the 1820s they started.
Nope. With that, guys, going to call it for a night. Thank you so much for coming along. Hope it was of interest to you. Like I say, if you might consider giving it a like, if you're not subscribed, get subscribed and checking out the link tree, I'd be greatly appreciated. So, with that, thank you very much, guys. Probably do a gaming stream at some point this week to test out entropy. And then I'll do another more in-depth stream, hopefully towards the end of the week. Thank you for coming along. Have a great evening. See you all soon. Bye.